these mics are very, very, very annoying. Don't buy the mid-level mics. Either go, you already know. So they pick up all the things.
Everything.
So I may be like, hold for sound for just a second. Or if you're in the middle of a story, I'm going to let it just go because I think everyone's sort of understanding in the audience land of how insane this time is. Oh, hi, you're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky ones that got out and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and am uniquely qualified to discuss this as I currently work, or I used to work, at a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So let's eat. I'd like to welcome our guest, Brandie Posey. Originally from Annapolis, Maryland, Brandie Posey is a stand-up comedian, writer, and producer who now calls LA's comedy scene home. She's been featured as a performer at the Benson Ball, New York Comedy Festival, and the Riot Comedy Festival, to name just a few of the many, many festivals she has performed at. She's opened for all of your favorite comics whose names I could go on and on about, but the two that we're going to talk about are Kyle Kinane and Maria Bamford, and the legendary punk band Against Me. Brandie has appeared on MTV, E! And Comedy Central. She's made her feature film debut in the indie dark comedy The Worst Year of My Life, directed by Jonathan Smith. And the most incredible of all is that her inaugural album Opinion Cave debuted at #1 on iTunes and #12 on Billboard.com, which if you don't work in comedy or don't know, that's insane and is such a huge accomplishment. I better know Brandie through her friends in this crazy business and through listening to her insanely witty and very funny podcast, Lady to Lady, which she co-hosts with two fellow comedians. Also different about this episode is that Brandie marks the first guest that I have spoken to but never actually met in person, and whose voice I've heard in comedy I've heard, but again, never met. So Brandie, we want to know more. Tell us about you. You're like, what got you into comedy? Brief us.
Hey, this is Brandie Posey. That's my voice for those listening. I've been a huge comedy fan forever. I remember, do you remember the movie Ace Ventura 2?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Seeing that movie in theaters was kind of a religious experience for me a little bit. I remember I'd always been a fan of comedy. I was a massive Jim Carrey fan. And then when I went to go see that with my brother and then my grandmother who hated it, which made me like it even more. The scene where he comes out of the rhino's butt was this moment of nirvana for me as a child, because I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. I want to feel like this all the time. And I just want to find a way to be in a world that is whatever he's doing, I want to be in that world. And my comedy is nothing like Jim Carrey. And I actually came to stand up relatively late, 25 or 26, but I wanted to work in comedy. So I went to film school at Drexel University because I applied to a ton of different places, but I got Orange County, where my guidance counselor didn't send my SATs to anybody.
Are you kidding me?
Man. Yeah. It was crazy. And I had a 1490. I was was pretty smart cookie.
That's the SAT score for listeners has changed now. So if you're thinking, what, out of 2,200? No, it was out of 1,600.
Yeah.
Not that long ago. Okay, sorry, keep going.
Yeah.
So so didn't send it out to any colleges?
Didn't send it out to any colleges. And then when I caught it, because all my friends were getting their acceptance letters, and I was like, smarter than these people. Why am I not hearing anything? It's I'm happy for them, but also what the fuck? So I called a few places and they're like, oh, we haven't even looked at your application because we don't have all your stuff. And my guidance counselor became the first adult that I ever yelled at that was outside of my family.
Sure. Yeah, I would have too.
And then I got into, when they finally set it out, I got into NYU, but I didn't get into Tisch. So they'd be like, you have to be undecided for a year. And I was like, how much is your college? No, that's not going to happen.
No.
So I got a scholarship to Drexel, and then I ended up going there. And I actually loved it. It's in Philadelphia, so I lived there for 4 years. But and too much to the consternation of my professors, I was like, cool, we're making short films. Sketches. Sketches is what I'm making. So they'd be like, no, but write something sad. And I'd be like, who gives a shit about 6 minutes of sad stuff? I can get a lot of jokes into 6 minutes instead. So I just really, really honed, I think, my sense of comedy, my own sense of humor through writing sketches, which makes sense with my stand-up is I tell stories and try to paint pictures and stuff like that. I think it comes from coming up that way. And then my senior year, I went to college in Philly, so I went to New York once a week to do sketch classes at the UCB in New York, because I was I want something else. I want to I want like people that are actually comedians to like teach me something before I go somewhere. And then when I graduated, it was, you know, LA or New York. And I'm just not a massive New York fan. It's like not for me. And so I picked LA, moved out here, and kind of fell in love with like stand up pretty quickly. Had never really paid that much attention to it, really, because like the comics in the 90s that were on TV when I was coming up, like most of them were just like kind of bro-y, and like I liked older comics, like, you know, obviously a big fan of like Carlin and stuff like that, but like you're more at that time underground comics I'd never really heard of, like Maria or like Brian Posehn or Patton Oswalt was like just starting to pop about, this is 12, 13 years ago now. And I remember seeing them at like UCB shows for free. You know, I'd go pay $5. You see Paul F. Tompkins and
So
all
crazy.
these comics that are massive. And I was like, what is this kind of stand-up? Because this speaks to me. And it's like technically called alt comedy, but...
So does that label bother you, just to jump in? Because I know some people struggle with that label.
I mean, I think it's a little outdated now because like initially alt comedy meant like literally just alternative to comedy clubs, which kind of came out of the 90s. And it's kind of hit a place where I think like more people think of it now as just like a weird comic that isn't necessarily doing like straight up like punchline jokes. But I also don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think to really be the most well-rounded performer you can be, you want to be able to hit clubs and do like your weird venues and stuff. And if you can make your jokes work in all those environments, then you're bulletproof. You know, I mean, as you tour the country, I get called an alt comic a lot because my hair's like different colors all the time, which is hilarious. But
Yeah.
like, I'm like, okay, cool. What year is it? Who cares that my hair's green? There's like a robot on Mars, but my hair is green. I guess I'm crazy. All right.
Cool, guys. Cool. We're doing it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like, I answer to it because people call me it enough, but also I'm like, I do well in clubs too. It takes a while. It depends on where you want to come up, basically, I think.
And just to jump in, so for the audience that would be listening, like we get a lot of listeners in the Midwest who are not affiliated with comedy at all. Is the distinction between performing at what would be a standalone club who's, you know, like the Improv or the Ice House or whatever, is there an actual distinction between opportunities that arrive from performing at a club like that versus a quote unquote alt room that might be the basement of a restaurant or I don't know, wherever else?
Well, I mean, speaking to LA specifically, I feel like our industry tends to go mostly to the clubs. Some people that like, you know, really want to push their roster and are more interested in like the art of stand-up will kind of hit a wide gamut of all of that stuff. In the Midwest, where your most of your comedy clubs are outside of LA and New York, their comedy clubs run on showcases, which is like you'll have like 10 or 12 comics a night, doing like 5 to 10 minutes each, basically. But most of the clubs and people in the Midwest, like if you go to comedy clubs, you're used to shows that work with like a host and then a feature and a headliner. And you're usually booked for like a weekend as a headliner. So you're doing 45 minutes, 1 or 2 times a week between Thursday and Sunday. And if you come up through a club system, accessing that is a little bit easier versus being an alt comic. But it's also difficult if you're like a woman.
What? That feels aggressive.
Isn't it crazy? It's hard to be a woman in comedy.
What?
Who knew?
Brand new.
But which I think is also where like the alt space is still great because like you can kind of create your own spaces there. Like I do. When I tour, I'll like book like a weekend or a couple days at a club or something, but I will do alt rooms around it. At the club, I might make, you make a couple $1,000s the weekend, but then like on your Tuesday through Thursday or whatever, you're doing shows that are like one-nighters with local comics that are throwing it. So you're meeting like the local scene in different cities and you're making like $100 a night or whatever, but it covers your stuff. So who cares? And it kind of hits the best of both worlds, I think. And people that tend to come out to those kind of shows are more... They'll kind of look up who comics are a little bit more than your club audiences tend to just be like, I want to go see comedy tonight. And they don't necessarily know what that means. And comics are very, very different from each other. So you could really love a headliner or you could not.
Sure.
So people that come to alt shows tend to have looked at a lineup and been like, oh, okay. They know a little bit more about it.
Okay. And so to jump back to your origin story. So you come out to LA and you were like, comedy's for me. Oh, wait a minute. These cool sort of quote unquote different comics who aren't doing setup punchline joke or setup joke punchline, whatever. That speaks to you. What is the next step then? Like, were you just like, I guess open mics for me, or did you know what to do next?
I mean, I didn't really. I Googled it. I was like, "How the hell do you become a comic?" And the Improv Olympic, which is like an improv theater out here, had a 4-week stand-up comedy workshop that was starting right around my birthday, my 25th birthday. And I was like, you know what? Let's try it. Let's just see, but let's see if I like this or not. Because, I was used to taking classes and stuff like that. So it felt like some structure and some understanding of how to do it. I ended up arguing with my teacher the entire time because I did not like her style of stand-up.
Wait, why?
She was just like super hacky and just like, it was out of the gate. It was important to me to write jokes that like to not put on like a character that was fake. I wanted to write like from my own experiences, and I would like bring a premise in, and she'd be like, "Okay," and then you should be like, "And then I'm a huge slut." And I'd be like, "Well, that's fine if I was, but I'm not. So I'm not going to write from that perspective because ultimately, if you write from my opinion is like if with stand up and stuff like that, if you're writing from a place that is not genuine, you will find a wall because."
Audiences can tell. They smell it.
Yeah. Audiences always know when you're lying to them.
Yep.
They might not even realize that you're lying, but they check out because they can feel that something is wrong in the room.
1,000%.
You get into a very uncanny valley space. So it's like a weird thing where you're like, what am I watching? I don't like it. Something's wrong, but I don't know what it is.
But I don't know what it is.
Energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
You feel the energy shift in the room. So I did that with her. It's funny because one of my really good friends is a TV writer that I met in that class. And we like our comedy anniversary is the same anniversary.
Aww.
Every year she's written on a bunch of roasts and TV shows and stuff. And it's like we very quickly were like,
something's up.
So we like, I remember like one of us said something. We looked at the other one. We're like, oh, you get it. Okay, cool.
We're on the same team.
I just remember her being like, you're like the teacher being like, you're like a Janine Garofalo type to me. And I was like, oh, is that a bad thing? Because I know who she is and I don't know who you are. So
okay.
I didn't say that, but I was in my head. I was like, lady,
I'm going to clock that. Like, noted. Okay, so you're in this class and did you actually get something out of it? Because if your teacher was telling you bad advice, did you learn anything?
Yeah, it made me justify what I thought was funny very quickly. So it kind of made me talk through, like defend myself and like why I wanted to say certain things on stage. And it was like, I think it made me consciously debate that versus taking longer just to find what I liked and what I didn't. It was like nice to be challenged by it. Sure. To be like, no, I don't want to do that. This is what I want to do. This is the joke that I like or whatever. And not that it was all that is like funny or whatever, but it definitely, I'm glad that it was a short thing. It kind of just to get my feet wet. And from there, I jumped right into open mics.
That grind is so specific.
Yes. It's a very specific grind. And it like, when you're starting also, I always think of like stand up as the art of learning to fail gracefully.
Oh, what a great way of saying that. Yeah. Yeah.
Because even like, when you're starting, you bomb all the time, and it's you learning to just fail in public with like some grace and be like, okay, what's a way that I can save myself here? And even when you've been doing it for a long time and you get to a point that like you have a really good set, the parts in the set that still need work, even though they aren't perceived as a bomb to an audience, you're like, that didn't hit as hard as I wanted it to. Wow. So you have tiny moments of failure. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I don't think failure is necessarily bad, but like you have these tiny moments that you're like, ooh, there's still work to be done there. And you learn to kind of embrace that, I think, over time.
That makes me want to throw up all over myself, all over my feet and die in a fire. Like I can't, the thought of being so fucking vulnerable. I always say the best comics unzip their skin, but I guess every comic is sort of, you guys are all unzipping your skin by choosing to be in a situation where, yes, people want to laugh, but they also want to criticize. And I think the thing about open mics in those rooms that I've observed is you're also performing for other comics who also want to make it and are also on the grind. And so trying to impress them, they want you to fail, because there's this weird, in my opinion, misconception that if you fail, all of a sudden they've succeeded. And I hate that vibe. I can't get down with that at all. So how did you, especially as a woman, how did you reckon that, or what's the word I'm looking for? How did
reconcile.
Jesus, thank you. Corona brain. Yeah. How did you reconcile that in your head where you were thinking, okay, I am openly knowing I'm going to fail. How do you find the chutzpah to keep going?
I think just like I looked at it as a challenge and was like, I know that I'm smart enough. Well, number one, once you go to an open mic, if you are just like not a crazy person who says horrible things, you're not going to be the worst person in the room.
No comic has ever answered the question that way. That's amazing. Okay.
I think it just starts from a place of just like, okay, well, I'm not the worst person in the room because I didn't admit a hate crime on stage. So I think I'm gonna be okay.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm starting out from a place that it's fine. And then you just have to like give yourself the gift of the patience to know that like, I know I'm going to get there and it's going to take time. But I will figure it out. And also watching mics and watching other people go up. I think a lot of comics make the mistake of just doing a set and leaving the room and hanging out or whatever. But when you watch an open mic, you learn so much from watching other people and what they do right and what they don't do right. And then you save yourself a lot of those lessons by being like, oh, okay, it's weird that they didn't move the mic stand out of the way. Okay. Oh, it's weird that they like, oh, this is a moment that they lost me in that joke. And like,
oh, wow.
I would treat it like, okay, this is like a 3-hour class. Like I presented my thing, but I'm still in class and I'm going to watch this entire thing. And then, you learn from that. And it is just like, I was very lucky that when I came up, a lot of my friends started at the same time where we were all like very supportive of each other. And, we like would go to the same mics and like it became this like, oh cool, like I like that was funny, what about this? Like we kind of like were very collaborative with helping each other like build up a little bit, which is not always the case, and often there is like a very toxic feeling at a lot of mics because you kind of just have, it attracts a very borderline personality.
Hello, that is so real. Yes. That is so
real. Yeah. So, and I think I also just, I don't entirely know where it comes from, but I just was always like, well, once I get past the part of my caveman brain that thinks if people don't laugh at me, then I'm going to die, which that's not going to happen.
Sure.
And it's just knowing that once you get past that, then all bets are off. And just also in LA, we're very blessed by getting to watch a lot of big comics work and seeing somebody big bomb.
Yes.
Or like tank a joke or something. And you're like, oh, well, if they still do it, it's a process.
For sure. And what has been interesting for me to watch is a comic whose joke I think is hilarious and the delivery is perfect. And the crowd, like a room full of 400 people doesn't respond. And I'm like, but that joke was fucking brilliant. Like that was so funny. And then watching them never do it again and being like, but that joke was so good.
Yeah, it's exactly. Well, like that's where you get, that's where the addiction came in for me, where I was like, oh, this is interesting because it's challenging in a different way every single night. Like you can do the exact same set in the exact same order and you can be on the ball for both times at 2 different shows in one night and it goes 2 completely different ways. And that's where it takes a long time to get to this point. But then I think like the lesson of like, you can't speed through the reps. If you're an amazing writer, that will like only help you so far. But like there's an unspoken thing that happens to you the more that you're on stage, that you just learn to, without even saying it, you manipulate the energy in the room.
Ooh.
And it's kind of just a weird thing that it's like a comedic gravitas. There's just something about just like you and you only get that from doing over time and like knowing what it's like to feel comfortable on that stage and to not, the audience needs to know that you are in charge.
Girl, I wish other people would say that 100, a million %. Yes, that.
Yeah, the moment that you lose a room, even if you're bombing and you're like, oh, this fucking sucks, they will still laugh at you.
If you ride it.
The second, if you give into the fear, and if an audience senses your fear, then they don't know who's in charge anymore.
Oh, and they hate that. They hate it. Yes.
Yeah. That's when you feel the uncertainty. Like I always call it, like if I'm about to go on stage at like a big show and I'm like a little bit nervous backstage, I like do this thing where I just look at myself and I'm like, you're about to be a casual alpha. Ooh. And everyone's going to be cool with it. You're in charge, but everybody's cool with it.
Oh, casual alpha. I'm writing that down. That's amazing. Yes.
Thank you. And that's like the energy. And, that becomes the thing that you're searching for. Where you're just like, oh, no, I'm in control. People don't even realize what's happening, but they like, it's like when you watch somebody tell a story and the whole room is turning and looking at them. It's like that there's just an unspoken charisma there that you can have some of it to start out with, but it is a muscle that you build over time, and there's no way to shortcut it. There's just no way to do it.
I totally agree. It's like dealing with toddlers. You have to, it's almost like watching the comics that do the best tell the room, like, it's not a, oh, fuck you. Like, I don't think that energy rides, but it's a sit down, guys. I got this. No. We're not, this isn't a conversation. You're going to sit there. You're going to drink this. You're going to eat this, and I will make you laugh. So shut up. I 100% agree.
It's just like, hey, baby, I'm in charge right now. We're going to have a good time.
We're going to have a good time. Yes.
Exactly. I'm mama right now.
100%.
Or I'm daddy, depending on the energy that the crowd needs that night.
Okay. That is so real.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So comedy is sort of a wash. You're like, oh, this is for me. Was there a particular show that you did or a set that you had where you were like clicked in and you were like, oh, I want to have this drug forever? Or was it just, you just knew that early on with theaters or with school, or what was there a moment?
Oh, classes. Oh, there was. So why I think it's a good idea to do something to start that's a little bit more structured. And like, there are very predatory comedy classes out there. Like those can be kind of bad, but like something that is just like our graduation show, we had like a crowd, and like, I have the tape. I've crushed that set. I mean, my cadence is totally different. I came out, I was aggressive in a way that I am not on stage. And I can feel, looking back now, I can see the fear, but my jokes and my adrenaline pushed me through, and I had a great set. And it became this like, I have the potential to be very good at this. And it was like a very first, like, okay, got it. Like when everything clicks into place, you like, I know I got like a taste of it during that set, but you like enter this fugue state kind of where you're almost like watching yourself, and you just know that anything you're about to say is going to set the room off. Yeah. When you're like fully in charge of room, and I only felt it for like a second in that set, but it becomes this feeling where you're like, oh, I'm like a maestro for a room full of people, and they were like in the palm of my hand. That feeling was just like so cool, and just like, oh wow, look what I'm capable of. It's like you're like channeling something from like a fucking comedy thing that you've never even,
it's an entity.
I don't even know what it is, but it's like this thing that you're just like, I don't know. It's just like an amazing energy that you're like, oh wow, how can I tap into that? Because this is like the height of what I am capable of with comedy, and like you start chasing that. And like I'm lucky in that I don't do it in like I like have been very conscious of like trying to have a life outside of it, and like not making that my only thing. Because I also do think that it serves your comedy if like you don't end up just being a comedian, because you got to be relatable.
Yes, you got to be in the world.
Yeah, and I also don't want to give that much control of my happiness to other people and to gatekeepers having to say yes or no to me along the way.
Girl, this is huge.
Yeah.
It's why you've had success. I mean, you're also hilarious, but this is, I mean, yes, you are saying exactly what I've observed. Mm-hmm. Yes. So at what point, so sort of get us to today, and the next section is where we talk about, yes, she did have customer service jobs. She didn't come out the womb successful, y'all. Calm down, everybody. Yes. She's had a few. So for now, do you feel like sort of that comedy, because that is your bread and butter. So what was the transition where you were like, I'm going to step off this cliff, and comedy this is how I am. This is my life now. Like, not your whole life. Obviously you have a life outside that, but this is what I'm.
The way that it becomes the thing. Well,
yes.
When I was starting in LA, I started running an open mic that went really well, and that was really fun. And then I started getting asked to host on different shows around town from there. And you kind of just start getting booked on like bad shows, and you get booked on veteran shows, and that's kind of, you just move up the ranks here. And then you get a good tape, and I applied to festivals and stuff like that, and got into Bridgetown Comedy Festival, which is this great festival in Portland. I realized from festivals, you start meeting the people in your class that are the best of the best from all over the country. And like, I love travel. Like, I have massive wanderlust. I always want to be on a car on the road. Like, a highway is just genuinely my favorite place in the world. If I'm not in traffic and I can just go, it's same. I could do that forever. I think I was a trucker in a former life or something.
Amazing.
CB radio of my heart. So I started just applying to more festivals, and just really genuinely enjoyed the people that I met, because I was like, oh, this is the level above open mics. Like, nobody here is like a shithead, like these like weird, these people that I like have to deal with at mics sometimes that are like toxic and just awful and say horrible shit to you. And it's like, oh, they aren't allowed here. This is like how you level up, because they're like, you know, you have to get approved for tapes and stuff like that. So I'd get into a festival and then I would book like a week around it, basically, of like try to do little weird one-nighters or the local shows in that city or something, because then I knew from other festivals, I knew people in those cities. So you kind of start building this web all over the country of like knowing like, okay, if I go to like Atlanta, these are like my friends in Atlanta, they can hook me up with like what to do. And I don't have an hour yet, but I can do like 20 minutes and like headline a thing or whatever. So you kind of just start building the map a little bit that way. And I was lucky because I had a marketing job. I was a social media coordinator at an automotive marketing firm, which was so weird.
But informs probably some of how you, like, your website's beautiful, probably informs some of that stuff.
Yeah. And I kind of just like, comedy kind of got me that job too, because I'd been a PA. When I first moved out here, I did like PA work, and then I kind of quickly got scooped up and became like a travel coordinator on things, like on reality shows and stuff like that, which actually that has like very been a huge help with comedy too. Just like being able to organize a tour and knowing how to like I have this Excel sheet that is fucking beautiful. And if you're booking a tour and you use it, you will never be worried about where you are any night, how long the drives are, what time zones you're entering into, who you're staying with, how much money you're making. It's just like, that job made me, that travel coordinating job made me like very like diligent about like the logistics, because once those are down, then you don't have to think about them. You don't have to be stressed about them. It's just, no, it's just booked, it's done. And it just made it really easy. But from there, this marketing company does like outdoor events and stuff like that. And I did like a weekend thing for them through some PA. And then one of the guys there was like, oh, you're super funny. He's like, oh, I'm a comic. He followed me on Twitter. And then he was like, do you do social media stuff? Like, because you don't realize this if you're creative, but like tweeting is like a thing that these corporations and stuff, it's like, it's magic to them. They're like, you can write, you know how to be a person and share that with people. We're just psychopaths to take all your money.
Hardcore facts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they
thought you were a magician.
Yeah, they thought I was a magician. They kind of scooped me up, and then I was like writing tweets for a couple car brands and stuff for a while through them. And that was like a part-time gig that I pushed to be able to do remotely as much as possible. And so I would take that on the road with me and stuff like that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, when I kind of started, and that was deeply helpful.
So that was what helped you. You were like, I have these little side hustles that are going to help me step over the edge and really make comedy my whole thing.
Yes. Yeah. I've like always spun different plates at different times. I mean, when I was a PA, I've been a karaoke host. I've been a Lyft driver.
We're gonna get into all that.
I'm a bookkeeper. I learned how to do that, which is also like an incredibly helpful skill. And I think that like if you are your own business, it's like important to understand how to keep your own books and to like understand your stuff. Because I take care of my own stuff, and I take care of Lady to Lady, my podcast too. So it's like good to kind of just know all of those things.
Well, and this isn't, I just want to jump in. Like this podcast isn't necessarily about that, but I do want to jump in and say, so do you feel like, you know, because I think some people think as soon as I've stepped into my creativity, that will be the only thing that I'm now doing. And that is my marker of success. And I bring up, I mean, this is a weird example, but Erykah Badu is a doula, or Tom Hardy is also a real estate agent. So I think that there's this misconception that the interpretation of full-blown success is that is literally the only way you make your money. Yeah. And it's like, why did Jessica Alba start The Honest Company? You know, why are these people getting into other things? And I think it speaks to your brilliance that you are like, of course you have other plates going in the air because of course you do, because you never want one to go away and be like, oh my God, my entire income.
COVID.
I was just, 100%.
COVID. I mean, I've maintained bookkeeping and stuff I can do remotely. And I've had like a roster of like 4 or 5 clients that it's very easy for me just to do their stuff from it, because it's just looking at bank accounts once a month, basically. And I can do that from wherever. So that's been something that I've been able to kind of keep going when all like the road work dried up. Sure. You know, and I've been able to pick up a few people along the way too. And it's also like, I think a lot of creatives have to be like, I'm creative, I don't want to deal with all this stuff. No, you're a business.
Facts.
And you need to understand as the CEO of your business how to run every aspect of your business. Because otherwise you will give your money away to people who not necessarily will take advantage of you, but we've heard enough stories in this town that shit happens. So you got to be able to like speak to your stuff. And, you know, no one is going to work harder for you than you're going to work for yourself.
100%.
So you need to know how to handle it from every angle. And if you're bad at math, whatever, you can hire people, whatever, like, you know, it's all good. But like, you need to understand that's what I need for this to be moving forward too. So, and I think a lot of those jobs, they also inform other parts of your creativity too. Where it's like Erykah Badu's a doula. That's a very spiritual thing to do. Like, does that inform her music?
100%.
Even if she doesn't say "I'm a doula" in a song, it's like I don't know what her current catalog is like, but
that's the number one hit actually is the "I'm a Doula" song. So
Erykah Badula.
Oh boy. But there it is.
Where's at midnight when you need it?
But I agree with you that it does inform other parts of your creativity, and not to share too much, but you did share a story about how you figured something out that was not fantastic on the business side of things for the podcast. And you figured that out because you keep the numbers and you're a smart girl. And you were like, oh, no. And it informed, and it wasn't, you know, anyway. I think even your side hustle, you know, informed your creativity.
Exactly. And like, also, not necessarily everybody works like this. There are some creatives that like, I don't even know if this is actually true, but they say that they are at their best in chaos. That is not me. I don't necessarily even think that's them, but that's their journey to figure out, man. But I find freedom comes from having the shit down that I can have down, and then I don't need to think about it. Sure. And like knowing that like the logistics of something are like sound and taken care of, and like I know where my money is. Financial stress is it nobody thrives from it.
No one. Zero of the people.
I mean, it's not good for anybody. I mean, and you know, the starving artist, like I do not want to be that. I want to have a nice life regardless. And you know, I'm not killing it, but I know how to, because I know what is coming in and what's not, I know how low to keep my overhead at to have the freedom to do what I want. And that comes from like taking the discipline to be like, okay, cool. This is like how much is probably going to come in. This is where money needs to go. And this is the means I need to live at to be able to maintain the lifestyle that I want, but also have the freedom that I want. Oof. And it's just important to know that. Otherwise, we're going to rack up a bunch of debt. Like nothing's going to be worth for your creativity. Then like you got bad credit, all your credit cards are out. And I've also been there. I mean, I'm not going to say that I haven't been there because I just like at a certain point was like so poor with stuff that that's just what happened. But I understood it, and you work back from it, because that like laying in bed at night being like, where the fuck does rent come from this month is who's specifically terrible. Anything good out of that?
Zero of the people.
That's your whole brain at that moment in time. You know, I mean, if you aren't a trust fund kid, then that is like a very big reality.
100%. I totally agree with that. Okay, so. Well, that's an amazing, you just gave so many pearls of wisdom to people who are looking at getting into this world. So we hope that you folks enjoyed your apps. We're going to go on to the entrees after a quick break. We are back, and now it is time for the entrees. So, okay, this is the speed round of questions. This is where we talk about customer service, everybody. So she's done it. Great. So here we go. Okay. What was your first job ever?
Working at my dad's accounting firm.
Okay.
From fifth grade on.
From fifth grade? Were you legally allowed to work at that time?
Not really. Not really. I was just like putting stickers on envelopes and stuff like that for years.
Okay. Yeah. How long did that job last?
That was like every summer. That was kind of what I would just go to work with him for a couple of days a week to like give my mom a break, I think, basically. And my dad also to be like, I don't want to pay anybody more. Basically, I get like $100 a week.
I was just going to say, he wasn't paying you. That's bullshit. But $100 a week. Okay.
I got $100 a week, but I was like 10 or 11. I was just like, I'm rolling in it. And now I'm an adult. I'm just like, I was child labor, dude. How could you do this to me?
It was a warehouse, you asshole.
Yeah, exactly. But I learned how to be in an office, which I like as I've grown, I've learned is like a skill that is invaluable, is just knowing how to do office shit, basically.
Sure.
You know, I mean, that goes a long way. So I did that. I mean, every summer until I was a senior, until as long as I lived there, like a couple days a week, I'd go help them in. And that's like where I learned a lot. I learned how to bookkeep from that, basically. And like very basic stuff. But like, as I got older, it was like, oh, okay, I kind of get this a little bit. And like, just kind of came up knowing that.
Were you ever interfacing with his clients, or was it always envelope? Well, that's kind of nice that you didn't have to deal with humans.
No, never had to deal with them. It was mostly just like data input and like matching up. Like a lot of bookkeeping is just literally looking at like a bank statement and making sure that all the transactions from the bank statement are in the accounting software, just making sure that the numbers all add up. So it's just like very kind of basic that stuff and like learning how to just do that.
And that doesn't make you crazy, that kind of work? Do you find it cathartic?
I mean, because of how like ethereal like comedy can be, because there's no right and wrong answer, there is something about math that like is a little bit fun, because I'm just like when there's like a zero difference and you're just like, nailed it, that's done, and there's nothing else I need to do.
Oh, it's tangible. So just
like,
yeah,
it's tangible. It's just nice to be like, cool, that's done. I don't need to. There's like, but is there a tag to this bank statement? No, it's like, that's not. That doesn't exist.
It just has to zero out. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so this question's a bit more laborious. How many customer service jobs have you had total? And feel free to count and take your time with this, because I wouldn't necessarily count the accounting job as a customer service job. It's a job, but when you were like customer interfacing, and this can be anything. I would count a PA. I would count running the karaoke room, like those things. Absolutely. I would add.
My first job after working for my dad, that my sophomore or my senior year summer, I worked for like a rib place. I was like a carryout girl.
Okay.
And just worked in the front of house for that, because I was like, I want to work in a restaurant. I never worked in a restaurant. I like want that experience too. Like working for my dad is fine, but I don't know. I want to talk to a weird chef. And then I learned, I was like, oh no, you don't.
No.
Those guys are questionable pedophiles sometimes. Did I say that? Not all chefs, but
I'm keeping
enough of them. That you're like, wait, you're 30 and you have a child. Do you know that I am 17? Please leave me alone.
I'm dying. Questionable pedophiles.
I worked at a rib joint for about 6 months until I graduated.
Okay.
In college, I worked at the TV station at our college campus, and kind of just dealing with like booking the schedule and stuff for that with people.
Oh, I would count that.
Yeah, it definitely counted. I mean, it was like a lot of public access weirdos and stuff like that.
Oh God, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. Okay.
And then a ton of PA work. I mean, in Philly, and then when I moved out here, I started out as a PA on this indie movie when I graduated the summer after I graduated college. That the top of like this, not Cutco knives, but a knife company that is like Cutco knives.
Oh.
The top of the pyramid man wanted to make a movie about growing up in New Jersey in the summer. And he thought he needed a PA, but what he needed was a line producer. Ooh. And I like.
Did you end up being the line producer?
I became the line producer. Ooh. I like figured out how to make a movie.
Oh, that is so hard. That is so much work. It
was insane. I mean, it really was like, it put me through the paces of just like, oh, you don't know anything. And all I have is like what I just learned in film school, which, was helpful, but not
more than he knew though.
Yeah, it's much more than he knew. So that was like, that summer was that. So I was just literally like setting up casting and dealing with like literally every aspect of making this like weird indie film. It's not very good, but I learned a ton. Also, it's so funny because he was this like Jersey Italian dude, and there's a lot of like pool party scenes and stuff with a bunch of like teens just like having a good time.
Shocking.
But then he would literally order fucking Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast for the entire cast and crew, and then he would get lunch catered by his Italian restaurant buddies. So he'd be bringing in like pizza and fettuccine alfredo to a pool party, and I'd have to be like, Don, all these girls in bikinis are not about to shove fettuccine alfredo in their faces. They're not gonna do that. You gotta have a salad on set, my man. It was just he was like, like just didn't
have words, and you're like, all right, cool, you know everything, got it, nice guy.
Like, all right, man, that's cool. They're not eating.
So all right, I guess it's fine. What was that movie called? Do you remember?
Our Summer Movie.
Our Summer Movie. Called. I'm writing it down.
Our Summer Movie.
Okay.
It's I forget what I'm listed at on IMDb, but like
you should have been
like,
line producer.
I fucking made that thing.
Okay. So I counted, I did like roughly 3 PA jobs. So that just to give you, so, and you did you do a ton of PA work in LA? Or was that the only job you did on the East Coast that was PA work? And then you came to LA?
No, I worked on a couple of like documentaries and stuff like that throughout college.
I'm gonna give you 2
and
more.
Then when I moved out here, it was like PA work initially. I started out kind of as a talent PA on a few different shows, and then I was a PA on music videos for. I worked for Anonymous Content for a while, and I was there. I was like a PA for music videos with them. And when I first jobs out here, I was a PA on a music video directed by Joaquin Phoenix.
Wow.
And he, I forget what the band's name was called, but he had like a bunch of his friends doing cameos and stuff like that. So you have to see like Christian Slater in person, which was funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was very funny too, because like they had a catering truck for all the cameos and stuff like that, but he just ate the extras pizza because he didn't want any salmon. He was like, I'd rather eat this pizza. He just hung out with the extras. It's funny.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like very endearing. I was like, Christian Slater's cool, I think.
Yeah, you're like a dope dude. Well, and it's apt that you would bring up his name because the Ugly Betty, I don't know if you were, I'm in Ohio, so I'm watching a lot of cable TV, and on USA, he was so good in it. I hated him. I was like, you're a really good actor.
He's a really good actor.
He is a good actor. Okay, so you did a handful. So I've got you up to like 9. Did you do, okay, so what got you, I count Lyft. I think that 100% counts.
Lyft is a big time customer service job.
Oh.
And I mean, Lyft, I actually do credit Lyft and the karaoke. I was a karaoke host for 3 years.
Okay.
At All Star Lanes out here at Eagle Rock, which is it's a bowling alley, dive bar, Chinese restaurant.
Wait, I love All Star Lanes though. If you go to LA, folks, you should absolutely go. It's so much fun. That would have been the most fun to do a karaoke room there. I didn't know they did karaoke there.
It was a blast. I mean, well, it was a blast when I wanted to host. When there is nothing harder than hosting 4 hours of karaoke when you do not want to be there. But it made me a better comic because I really had to like dig deep and find that enthusiasm and like the energy to host the room. Because I really tried to treat it as a show all the time, where I'd be like, all right, cool, man, let's get this next person up on stage. He was hosting. And that is, I really credit doing that as a big reason for finding that like casual alpha energy.
Wow.
Because it wasn't about, there's no jokes to host in karaoke. You could have a throwaway line here or there, but it's like you were in charge of a room in an unspoken way. And you got to like tell drunks to go away, you know, like, hey man, look, you got bumped because you didn't tip me. That's how it's going to go. And you got to be like funny with that person, but also let them know, get the fuck away from me, without like getting into a confrontation.
Wow.
And so much of that kind of just dealing with these people, that attitude kind of like, I brought that over to stand up for like rowdy shows, especially. It's just like learning how to like deal with people. And I'm more prepared on a stand up stage, but like doing karaoke, it was like, because that place was like, for those who have never been, it does not feel like you're in Los Angeles. It feels like a like roadhouse.
Feels like the town I grew up in. It's so fun.
It's towny. Like Eagle Rock, California has townies.
Sure does.
They're not Angelinos. They are townies of Eagle Rock specifically.
And they work in Eagle Rock and they live in Eagle Rock and they never. It's like its own city.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
High school at Eagle Rock High.
Sure,
they still go to the football games, and you're like, you live in LA. You go to high school football games,
and you're 50. And you have no kids on the team. What are you doing? 100%.
It's very funny, and that place trained me for the road a lot, because it was just like, this is not LA. This feels like the Midwest. It's a blast. But yeah, so that karaoke is a huge thing. And then Lyft, I got rid of the karaoke job because I started driving for Lyft. And at the beginning of Lyft, you used to make a fuck ton of money driving for Lyft.
Really?
Yeah. At the very, very beginning of Lyft, because I was like an early adopter. Because I remember doing shows in San Francisco and seeing the big pink mustaches. Do you remember like the really big one that first came out?
They'd put them on the front of the car, right? Mm-hmm. And in the dashboard. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yep, I remember seeing those, and I was like,
"How's that?
What the fuck is that?" And somebody in San Francisco told me, and they were like, "Yeah, the drivers make a ton of money." So when it came to LA, I like knew what it was, and I immediately signed up. I mean, it's funny because when I started, you went to driver training in person.
Oh, wow.
And that completely went away. That became like you answered a couple questions on an app. There was a whole thing that you did, but I did it in person with like 5 or 6 other people. And like, it was very silly because you literally like, they would have you act out how to be a driver, because also at the beginning of Lyft, they were like, we're the friend with the car. She'd like fist bump people.
Stop.
And like, yeah, they wanted you to like, be like, hey, come sit in the front seat with me. Let's fist bump and have a good time. Like they wanted you to do that. And like I acted it up. I was like, yeah, sure. You had you sitting on these 2 bouncy balls and you bounce up and down and you'd be like, this
Brandie,
is how I'm a driver.
Brandie,
Dude, that's like what it used to be when you first started as a Lyft driver. It was the onboarding was crazy. It was just this like weird little like pink mustache cult of like happy joy people. And I was like, that is not my energy, but for this money, I'll do it. Okay, whatever.
Wait, are you comfortable saying specifically how much you could make when you how much?
When you first started for Lyft, they gave you a base rate, which they took away over time.
Wow.
The base rate, because they knew they weren't going to get a lot of rides, as it was like the advertising was going out and everything. During the week, Monday through Thursday, you'd make $25 an hour. And on the weekend, you made $35 an hour.
Holy God, you wouldn't even need tips. That's a grip of money.
It's good. Yeah, it's good money. And because you weren't getting rides, literally, I'd just be at home watching TV or hanging out with people and I wouldn't get a call for 4.5 hours. And I'd just be like working on stuff on my computer. I'd be, I guess I just made $100. And then you give a ride to one person that's going like 5 miles or something. And you go home and, the early days of Lyft were like, they ruled.
I mean, that was manna from heaven. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So that got you out of karaoke.
Yeah, because most karaoke hosts make more than this. And I just like didn't want to find more gigs. So whatever, because it like was draining. But that karaoke job was 4 hours, 10 to 2 a.m. And it was like $50 and then whatever you made in tips.
Wow, so, that $50 for that is not worth it. So would people tip?
It really depended. I'm sure restaurants are kind of the same way, where like the first week of the month after rent has been paid, you're making less tips.
Yep.
The third week of the month, you're making the most tips because people just got their second paycheck.
Correct.
Your weekend right before rent is due is usually pretty light. You're not getting a lot of people. So it really became this, I'm not really sure how much I'm going to make. And I just didn't want to. Yeah, that became a thing. And
that grind is also so specific than not knowing, like, especially because of how you've explained your brain works, and also how that is part of exactly what you were speaking to earlier of the, if you're going to bed at night being like, where's my money coming from? You're not being creative. But also if you have all of these various side hustles and you still can't pay rent, it is so defeating, because then your mind is still consumed with that, and your time was consumed with that, and you still can't pay rent. Oh,
Well, and around the karaoke job was my social media gig, they shut down that department of the company. So I luckily got unemployment for 6 months, and it lined up with like, I knew I was going to start going on the road more, and I'd been waiting. I just was like, I'm going to hit it. I'm going to do what I can. But there's also, I'm not like headlining clubs. I was headlining like weird bars in the middle of nowhere where you're not making any money.
Sure.
But I knew I did not want to go back to a job like that, because it also took a lot of my brain power for that. I was like, no, I just want like side hustles that like when they're done, they're done. I don't want to have to think about email on my phone. I don't want to feel like I don't want to feel the responsibility of any job except for comedy. So the karaoke gig kind of came into my life through a friend that had been doing it before. Was just like looking for somebody to help him for a weekend, and then he just didn't want to do it anymore.
Which I get.
Yeah, I was like, totally. So that kind of became just cash under the table while my unemployment was happening. And then when Lyft came to LA, I was like, that is it. Because Lyft also, you can pick your own schedule completely.
Oh, it's the best. That part's great.
Yeah.
That
part about it is really great. I mean, the pricing has gotten to a point that is really messed up, but you used to be able to make like legitimate money. Even here, I'm gonna look it up while we're talking. Because my brain is the way that it is. I used to keep track of like...
Yeah, I did Uber for a week because I was desperate to try right before I got a bartending gig. And I couldn't justify staying in my car for 12 hours in order to make between $100 and $150. I just couldn't. I was like, I don't want my car on for 12 hours. And also that to me, it was like, I'm spending more in gas and maintenance and whatnot. So the base level pay when they first started makes sense to me. That feels very logical. But again, it's the flawed model that exists in restaurants as well, that that the tips become your income, and then you are dependent upon someone else's generosity to pay your rent. And that is its own form of exhaustion that is really tough. So I think that model initially makes sense, and I see why you did it.
Yeah, I'm opening these up as we go.
Yeah,
2013, which is the first year that I drove for Lyft.
And that's the first year it came to LA?
This is the first year it came to LA.
Okay.
And so this includes the hourly that they just gave you, and then And then they stopped doing that, and then it was just based on rides. So that year averaged $20.37 an hour.
Wow. How many hours worked?
Let me see. I can tell you. That year I worked 250 hours. And I started in May. From May through December of that year.
You made $4,000 roughly?
$6,500.
Oh, shit. See, I can't do math. Don't ask me. That's amazing. Okay. So that's about $1,000 a month. I mean, roughly.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like that was paying my rent. And then let me know if this is also like too much detail.
No, this is great.
2014, I made $22.04 an hour.
So it went up.
And then I only drove like 200 miles that year, which turned into so that's also the year. Oh, and this was beautiful. For a minute, there was a thing where like Uber was really competing with Lyft, and they were like trying to poach Lyft drivers. So they'd be like, if you come drive for Uber, you sign on with us, and then you, God, I missed this. And you do one ride, we will give you $1,000.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then also from there for the next 2 months, I think it was like, you made like $40 an hour, regardless of how many rides you did.
Wow.
So I did that too. And then also, if you signed up other Lyft drivers, you got $1,000 bonus for every person that you onboarded.
Oh, I would have gotten so many of my friends. I'd be like, just do one ride. I don't care. Just please get me this $1,000.
I onboarded like a ton of people because I was just like, nope, we're going to do it.
Did you keep track of how many people you onboarded and how much money you made off of that? I'm just very curious since you're looking at your charts.
I onboarded 6 people.
God damn.
So I made $6,000 off of $6,000 off of that.
And that was over and above what you were making hourly and with rides. Mm-hmm. Oh, I would have done the same thing. So how many hours a week, because you were still doing comedy during that whole time. So how many hours a week were you putting towards Lyft whilst you were, doing stand-up and whatnot?
At that time, I think I was still just doing maybe like 10 hours a week or something. It wasn't so crazy because I had I think I still had like some unemployment-y whatever going on. Because like for whatever reason, I feel like I didn't need to, I still had my unemployment going, but I didn't need, so I would be, okay, I'm going to extend my unemployment as long as possible by like driving a few hours this week, so then I'm getting less money from unemployment, but like I kind of am balancing it out. So like that unemployment one will just go longer. So then 2015 is when it started going down, because 2015 I made $17 an hour with Lyft.
Ooh, that's a significant drop. That's $5 less an hour. Ooh, that sort of starts to become not worth it because it's the wear and tear on your car. That's barely above minimum wage. That's tough. Mm-hmm. So then when did you say you were done with Lyft altogether?
2018 is the last time that I really did anything.
So you stuck it out even when you weren't making a ton of money.
I mean, so that year, that 2016 was the year that I started really kind of trying to ramp up like the bookkeeping stuff. But I always kept Lyft on the side as just like and also it would be like, okay, I'm about to go on tour. I need extra cash. So I'm going to like 2 weeks beforehand, I'm just going to work full time and just put away money as much as possible.
That is the part of that flexibility that is what is so appealing to artists. That's why that they're flooded with drivers, because that set your own schedule or holy shit, I need some money thing is pretty amazing.
Oh, exactly. That part's great. The problem with it, I think, and I had an ex that did this where he'd be like, cool, if I work really hard, I can make $200 a day. And that means this week I can make $1,000. And then the first day you're like, this kind of sucks. I only made $50. Okay, that's fine. So the next couple of days I got to make like
$350.
Yes. Yeah. And then that kind of starts adding up. Then you don't end up making the money that you think you're going to by the end of it. Because you just have to be self-disciplined about it. To be like, I'm not going home until I've made this much money. And that sucks sometimes because you'll be near your house and then you get a call that takes you out to Encino or whatever. And you're like, fuck, I was tired. I was done. I also had like rules that I would apply to myself with Lyft where like I wouldn't drive to Hollywood on the weekend at all or on any night after the sun went down, because any passenger was not worth it.
No, because it's too risky. Would you be able to see? I thought that on the interface, though, they wouldn't tell you where the person was going, so you wouldn't decline a ride.
They used to be able to show it to you.
Okay.
They changed. They have changed it. I think probably because of people like me.
Well, I mean, but also it's pissing off their drivers, because there have been times I've called a driver to go to the airport, and as soon as I get in the car and they start driving, they'll go, you're going to the airport. And I'd be like, yes, that's what I called you for. Yeah. And they'd say, God, I wouldn't have accepted it. And then it's like, okay, you can be mad at your company. Like, I don't, I mean,
it's not my fault.
I told the app where I was going. So so you had that set of rules. What other, did you have other rules that you were like, did you ever kick anybody out of your car or have an experience where you're like, this is unsafe and I'm out?
I luckily never had anybody puke in my car. I had one girl get very close, which is very funny because I was driving her in Silver Lake and she picked her up at like some bar, like that Tenants in the Trees or whatever that was called. Just driving her home to Echo Park or whatever.
Which is close for non-Angelinos. It should be a very close ride.
Pretty close to each other.
Yeah.
But she gets in and she's just like very proper. And she was like, I took all the stuff out of my purse. So just so you know, if I puke, I'll just puke into my purse and it'll be okay.
It's so specific.
And I was like, I can just pull over.
Yeah.
And then you can just puke out of my car.
Not in my vehicle.
Don't puke in your purse.
Yeah. Or in my car. Neither are an option.
Just don't do that. And I remember her just being like, no, it's fine. I've done it before. And this purse wash is really easy. So I have a plan though. I want you to know that I have a plan. And I was like, don't do that.
Abandoned plan. Jump ship. Not a plan.
It's a bad plan.
Bad plan.
There's lots of plans. Not all plans are good. This is a bad plan, lady. I was like, well, I'm just going to talk to her about how bad her plan is until I get to her house. And luckily she didn't puke, but she like,
smart.
And then we got there and she was like, wow, I guess I didn't need it. And she put everything back in her purse. And then she stood up and she got out of my car. And then she
promptly vomited
my car.
God.
And I was just like, if you had done it in my car, I would have fucking killed you. I would have killed you.
Well, they say that I talked to a driver about it once, and maybe you can confirm or deny this. They said that the policy is the rider has to pay like a $500 fee, but then the driver only sees 100 of that. And then you can take your car to a specific handful of car washes that will detail the interior at the expense of Lyft, but you can only get it done twice. And this driver, because I smelled it in his car, and then he also had all these like pine air fresheners. And I said to him, I was like, "Woo, this is rough," because we were friendly. And he was like, "Oh no," he goes, "The person that puked in my car, it was a year ago," and he said, "I cannot get rid of the smell." And he goes, Lyft made $400 off of that experience. And he was like, I saw 100 of that. And he goes, I've gotten my interior detailed 3 more times, which would have been 5 total. And he said, it still exists. And I was like, that's not worth it. It's your own personal car.
Yeah, exactly. Which is where like the Hollywood rules came in. Cause I definitely would pick up people like anywhere there's tourists, like people, especially at Hollywood, people come to Hollywood and they want to be like, I'm like a movie star. So I'm just a real piece of shit. And they get real drunk and they're having their entourage moment and you're like, no, I'm not going to deal with you. It's just not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. So I just wouldn't do that. I also, you learn that like different areas of the city drink in very different ways.
Oh, how interesting.
Where like the West Side is more of like case of beer, like frat boy or divorced dad drinking. That's what's happening out there. It's just, they're getting like wasted, but they're
ugly
like
drunk,
off of like beer, like they're like happy drunks. Like I never really picked up any like West Side bros that were like shitty or like mean about anything. They were just always like, fucking yeah, let's do this. Hell yeah. I'm really, really drunk. Hey lady, are you having a good night? You won't come up? They're like, no, I'm good. Thanks. All cool. Well, good. Nice to meet you. Like never felt unsafe. They were great. And then Hollywood, just don't fuck with it. Not worth it. West Hollywood, people weren't necessarily drunk, but they were on a lot of drugs.
Oh, that was, rough. That's rough. Yes.
Yeah. A lot of drugs. West Hollywood also, I wouldn't go there at night because it just like wasn't worth it because people weren't going very far and then the traffic is awful. And you would also pick up people that like, you get a lot of like people, like tourists come to that area too with like the Abbey or whatever. They're like, I want to be like the Abbey. And then I'm just not the right person for that. I'm not going to do it.
No thanks.
And then the East Side, people just like want like really good bourbon and like the liquor is more of like an East Side thing. So they wouldn't get as like
sloppy,
wasted, but they would be like, it was just like a different kind of drunk.
Oof.
Like you could tell they were like, I'm gonna drink tonight, but not enough that I'm gonna miss brunch tomorrow. Like that was much more of
interesting.
an East Side feeling. Yeah.
Oh, funny. I would have flip-flopped those. That's interesting. Okay.
Oh, the psychology of the city is very weird.
Yeah. And yet incredibly transparent. That's so interesting. So you're doing Lyft, and how long before you were like, this no longer serves my needs? Because you were saying, before a tour or something, you would just pick up some rides or whatever. What was the like?
So I put out my album when that came out I put that out in 2016.
Okay.
So that's the other thing too, because I had money coming in from that through like Sirius XM, basically. Like that's where most of your plays, your money comes from your plays on there. Spotify is, you get a fraction of a penny at every play. So I say, if you don't want to buy my album, put it on mute on overnight and I'll make $5. So thank you.
Oh, what a great suggestion.
Yeah. It's like, please do that instead. So I started having money come in like halfway through 2016 for that. And in 2018, I think it started bumping up a little bit more. I got played on a few more channels and stuff, and I really committed to touring a lot that year. So I tried to be like, and my podcast started making money in 2018 too. And like, we don't make a ton of money, but that was like also like, we had made the decision that like anything we made, we were just going to put into a bank account. So we had like a nest egg basically versus
Brilliant.
Like splitting, you get a check for like $500 a few times a year and then splitting it between 3 people. It was like, no, that isn't going to do anything for us in the short term. Whatever, I can make $100 a number of ways if I need to. But if I put that in an account over time, then when we want to go on the road or we want to make merch, we like have something we can pay out of.
Brilliant.
So like we haven't been putting money into the podcast basically since the beginning. Like every penny that comes in or out of Lady to Lady has been made by Lady to Lady.
Wow.
Like that was important to us. And 2018 is the year that we were starting able to pay ourselves like kind of like a monthly stipend out of that. So as soon, like that's kind of the year that I was like, I will only lift if I have to lift. And I didn't really have to, and thankfully was able to kind of just like everything else kind of paid for itself at a certain point. My last lift day, I'll tell you,
was 2018. You said, right?
Yeah, it was 2018, and it was, I could tell you, October 15th, 2018. That was my last day driving for Lyft.
And was that your last customer service job?
No, actually. So I'll pick up little side hustles here and there.
Sure.
And sometimes I'll just do things just as like all right, it's a 2-week thing. I'll make a good chunk of money, and it might be a weird story or something will come out of it.
Sure.
And last year I did like a Live Nation event for BTS, the K-pop band.
Shut up.
They had a pop-up shop for like their clothes and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I want to go meet some weird K-pop fans. I'll do that shit. So
and there are so many. There are so many domestic K-pop fans. It's nuts.
And they're
on
crazy.
One. Yeah.
I mean, cool. I'm like, wow, you guys are like, I mean, good for them because they found their community, but they are like rabid about it in a way that I'm like, damn, that's.
But if you think about it, we had like Backstreet Boys and we had NSYNC, and so we had these boy bands that were domestic that we could love, minus the Jonas Brothers. I can't really think of any for the generation now. I'm like, well, what domestic all boy bands are there? Yeah. That, I mean, and maybe I've aged out of that, but I'm like, I don't know. It makes sense that there's K-pop stans now because I'm like, oh, right. Yeah. You don't have this sort of domestic boys that you can chase around and be like, I love you. So yeah, it is interesting. Okay.
I mean, totally. It just was fascinating because they'd be like, because they assumed everyone working there was like a massive fan of this band too.
Oh, that's sweet.
So they'd be like, who's your favorite member of BTS? And I'd be like, Jungkook. That's one of their names, right? I know that because somebody else like ranted to me for 10 minutes about how great he was. So he's my favorite.
That's so genuinely sweet though. I actually love that.
It was very fun. And it was like, I was like, I will take gigs sometimes to be like, I haven't been around like people that aren't comedians or like in the arts and entertainment world in a while. So let me just put myself there and just see if anything comes from that or whatever. So
lovely.
That's the last customer service job I had from.
Okay. So I added
for 2 weeks last year. Yeah.
Okay. So we're up to 13. So we would say 13 is roughly how many customer service jobs you've had. Okay. And you're sort of a loyalist. So that's not to say that you haven't had that's a grind in and of itself because some people think the more customer service jobs you have, the better. No, it's just she's committed to long periods of time. I could never have done Lyft for 5 years. I would have stabbed out my own eyeballs. So good for you. Oh, and I want to go back to that question. Did you ever have a scary experience though when you were doing Lyft? I know you said you had those specific rules, so that maybe helped you not have one. But apart from
I never did.
Okay.
There were times that I'd get a request, and this spoke to my own biases, and it also taught me a lot about the city. And there were times where I'd be like driving through South Central on the way back from something. I'd get a ride, and I'd be like, okay, I don't really know where I am, but and then I'd have to, look at your own prejudices, and you're like, okay,
Sure.
I've heard scary things about South Central. Fuck it, I'll pick up somebody here and see what happens. And they'd be some of the best rides I'd ever had.
Of course. Yeah, that's lovely.
I remember picking up this like auntie. What the hell was her name? Her name was like Auntie something. Auntie Tara, I think.
Aw.
And she was just talking about, she's this like older black lady, and she was just like, I'm not riding the bus anymore. I'm too old. I hate all those hoes and bitches on the bus. And she was just talking about all the hoochies on the bus she was like, I don't want to watch you try to pick up these little boys, and they're all little boys. And she was just like killing me. Oh, she was killing me. We were just talking about, and I think I had just had like I had some guy hit on me at like at a bar that wouldn't leave me alone. And I have a thing where if somebody won't leave me alone, I just like will give them 2 times, and then I start clapping in their face like they're a coyote.
Oh, wait, I will die.
Nobody wants you here. Nobody wants you here.
I love that you do that. Yeah. That's amazing.
I'll be so nice until you don't respect my no. And once you don't respect my no, then you have become a coyote to me. And I will do everything I can to just scare you away like one. And I was telling her about that, and she was just like, I'm going to tell my nieces about this.
I love it. How sweet is that?
Yeah, so it was just a fun, like, I mean, I met a lot of people that I really enjoyed. The only times that I was like, I never felt unsafe, but there were times where you'd get a request from a dude, and he would have you go to a hotel, and you would
a prostitute or a sex worker.
A sex worker. Yeah, you pick up a sex worker, and then he'd call and be like, you take her to this address, you do not stop anywhere else along the way.
Oh, that's a John. You're like, this is a John facilitating this.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd chat with those gals and just make sure that they were like in a decent enough headspace to make sure they weren't being trafficked.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh. And I mean, I never had that, but I mean, that happened often.
Yeah.
At night around, especially all the hotels over by LAX. Like
100%.
Hotels over there.
Yeah.
You'd get, you'd pick up a girl and they come out and they'd be like, where am I going next? And I'd be like, oh, okay. Well, I guess you know what's going on.
Oh, my heart. Oh, that's tough.
And I never felt unsafe, but I was also like, I hope you're making more money than I am tonight.
Trust. I hope this was worth it for you. At least, bless. I can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're driving sex workers around the city at night in LA. And
you are. Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
But I also felt like there were times where I felt like I heard so many horror stories from people with like bad cab driver stories. And like women would be like, I'm just so glad you're a woman driver. I've had like so many shitty experiences. So like, especially when I picked up women of any kind, I'd be like, sure. Oh, good. We're going to have a good, safe ride. I'm going to get you somewhere safe. So I genuinely also felt like good about that too.
Oh, I would have too. That's very empowering. And it's also uplifting. There's self-esteem around that. That's lovely. Definitely. Especially when you're dealing with degenerate comedians all the time.
For sure. Well, and also being a comic really kind of gave me this like power. I get guys in the car that would try to hit on me for a second, but I just like razz them and make fun of them. And they very quickly would realize, she's funnier than me, or like, I'm not going to fuck with this, or like,
I'm in her car.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm lucky too. I have like a weird mural painted on the side of my car because I got it done through like a fundraiser thing years ago. So it has like Abe Lincoln fighting a T-Rex in space on the side of my car.
It's amazing. That is cool. So amazing.
Also, dudes would get in and they'd be like, what am I in? Like, I think I was just like too cool. So they had like their normal bullshit. Like they just didn't know what to do. Like, how do I
put her in a box
with a dinosaur on her car?
How gangster is that? I don't think I can fuck with her. Okay, great. I won't.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Okay. Yeah. I love that detail. Okay. So of all of your customer service jobs, which was your favorite? And obviously comedy's your I consider comedy a customer service job. So actually I would put you down for 14, but what's your favorite that is not comedy?
Honestly, like if the money hadn't changed with Lyft,
you would have stuck it out.
I genuinely enjoyed doing it.
That's what I thought you were going to say. It seems like
it. Yeah, I genuinely liked it. I liked the individual one-on-one with people. I got not like crazy stories out of it, but just like I like connecting with people. It's like part of the thing I like about stand-up so much. And it kind of became this like, I wouldn't run bits at them, but it felt like a one-on-one show of just like, we're just going to have a conversation and banter, and then this will be fun. And, I really enjoyed getting to like see different parts of the city that I wouldn't have gone to on my own, and just like learning LA through other people's eyes. And like that That I really enjoyed a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your least favorite?
Working in that restaurant when I was in high school, it was weird because I always knew that I was going to quit and go to college, and a lot of people there had like a weird chip on their shoulder because of that.
Oh yes.
Against me.
Oh yes.
And I'd never experienced that before, and I was just like, I'm nice. I was a carryout girl. I made more tips than any other carryout girl there. They would get like a couple bucks a shift, and I would walk away with $40 or $50 in tips. I don't know why, but I just, the early charisma or whatever.
Yeah, well, sure. I'm sure that's part of it. And you engaged with them, and you weren't just like, here's your fucking food, whatever.
No, exactly. The people-pleasing part of me that can be rough sometimes, in that case, it really worked for me. I'm good at tip jobs because of it.
Same. I hate it.
Yeah. It's like, this is my cross to bear, and sometimes it pays off.
Yep. I'm going to get actual cash. Okay.
Yeah. So that job, because it just like, it just really bummed me out the way that I was like, oh, people are being weird. And I did have like, there was like a chef that like wouldn't leave me the fuck alone. And he like, I'd be like, hey man, I'm like not interested in you. This is weird. And then one time I remember he wasn't working, but he like came to see me, and he had like a 2-year-old kid.
No, it's too much.
He brought his son to meet me. And I was like, dude, I'm like going to college, and you're like 35-year-old chef.
No.
Also, it's crazy I'm 36, and like that's like the age, like around the age that he was. I'm like,
oof.
You were talking to a teenager.
It's so much. It's too much. It's too much. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
How can you even relate to a teenager at that age? I mean, don't you find them infinitely more irritating? I mean, whatever.
So deeply insufferable. I mean, I look back at like videos of me and I'm just like, you thought you were so funny. You were so annoying. You were so annoying. I mean, funny to your friends then because we're all annoying. I mean, you're a teenager. You're barely a person.
Yeah, hello. And doesn't it make you so grateful that we didn't have social media at like growing up, that you're like, oh my God, I can't imagine.
Yeah, I'm glad that stuff just exists on like if I get a high 8 tape somewhere. That's
hello. Okay, what's the weirdest thing you've ever been asked to do whilst on the clock?
I bet you there's some weird dumb. Oh, I know what it is. I had a PA job where we're shooting this music video at like a diner way, way south in La Cienega out here. And the video was this guy that he was friends with a bunch of drag queens. So they were like the background. This diner was full of drag queens.
Okay.
And my job as the PA was to make sure that they did not do drugs.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. They told me, they were like, you need to make sure that they do not get too drunk or too high. And I was like, how do I do that?
How?
I'm 22. I'm from Maryland. I've never been around drag queens before. Like, they're cool, but also like, what am I supposed to do? So I just would like talk to them and be like, where are you going? Oh, and I just like was just an annoying person just following drag queens around all night, just trying to be like, can you not
shoot that in your arm?
Snort something in the bathroom?
Oh my God. That's far too much pressure also for anyone, really. That's insane.
It was very strange.
They
were like not none of them would have been on Drag Race.
This was a very particular brand of drag queen.
It was a real motley crew.
Well, that's the most intense answer I think I've ever gotten about. I mean, like we've gotten sexual answers and things, but I think it's easier to deflect the sexual thing in theory, but to have to be tasked with trying to get people to not be degenerates, I don't think, or not drug people that use drugs are not degenerates, blah, whatever.
Do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want. Also, live your life. But don't make me.
It was also like, dude, the singer was friends with all of them, and I was like, why can't he just tell his friends to not be assholes?
Don't use while on set for me to handle my career. Maybe take it seriously because you care about me.
Exactly. It was just such a weird, and it was a bare bones crew too, and it was just like overnight. I remember at like 5 a.m, they were like, okay, go to Norm's and pick up like 30 breakfast sandwiches or something. And like, I have like a real egg thing. Like I can't.
That smell. I love eating eggs, but that smell, I can't handle if it's in the house. No.
Yeah, it's bad. Some of my car just like smelled like eggs for a couple days after that. And I was like,
I'd prefer vomit over eggs. Yuck.
Yeah.
No thanks.
No, exactly. So it was just a weird that I remember being like, sometimes like in entertainment, you'll do something and you're like, oh, am I mentally ill? Is that how I ended up here? Wait a second.
Oh my God. Girl, the number of times I've looked around at the crew of rascals around me where we're all doing the same job. And I'm like, yo, I'm not the odd man out. There's something about me that works in this. So if I'm diagnosing everybody else, I myself am diagnosable.
Yeah.
So
I'm part of this
girl.
too.
Yes, I am part of this problem. 100%. Am I mentally ill? Without question. I totally identify with that question. That is brilliant. You're giving me so many like one-line gems. I'm into it. Okay. Was there an incident in any of these jobs where you had a manager, that can also be maybe somebody above the line or something on set, where someone asked to speak to either the manager or the person above you in relation to something you had said or done?
Oh yeah. Karaoke.
I was thinking you were going to say that. Okay. What happened? Because people get so weird when they think they're in this performative experience, but also townies, God love them. I grew up with them, but whew, they got away.
There was this lady who, there was one night the bar was like pretty empty, and then her and 3 of her friends came in and had a couple songs ahead of them, so the list wasn't too deep. They all signed up. They didn't tip me, and then they went to their table, and then this couple came in and they were like, hey, can we sing next? And I was like, if you tip me, and they gave me $20. So the way the karaoke works, you give me money, you go up the list. That's how it works. For the listener that is
trade secrets.
I've always been like, why don't I get my songs picked? Tip, motherfuckers. There's one woman in that first group, when that couple got called, she flew up to the stage and she was like, excuse me, we are here before them. What's going on? And I was like, well, they just give me $20. They just want to sing a song and get out. So you guys just, and it literally was like, they just got there right after them. It was like a 2-minute break or something like that. I was like, look, you guys just got here too. Sit at your booth, grab a drink. They're going to sing next. And then there's like 2 songs and then you guys are out.
For this free experience that you're having.
Yeah, for this free experience that you're having tonight. And I was like, well, they tipped me $20. That's kind of how karaoke works.
Good
just like
for
trying
being
to be
honest.
nice, but like this is what's going on.
Sure.
She grabs my list, crosses her name off, drops it down on the table, and then flounces back to her table and just like crosses her arms. It is just like to all of her friends.
Okay.
And her friends were perfectly fine. Like they were like, okay, like you could tell that they looked over and they were like, yeah, it's karaoke, lady. That's how it works. So the 3 songs happen. Her friends, they all come up and sing 3 songs. One of them was like, I'm sorry that she did that. And I was like, no, you guys are fine. She should probably just stay away from me if that's the way she's going to be. Probably not a good idea.
I'd advise against it. Go over there, please. Amazing.
I used to have these like little cards that had like my Twitter on them because I was like, hey, I'm also a comedian if you want to come to a show. Because I started running a show at All Star Lanes like my second year of karaoke too on Tuesdays. I would just do like a Tuesday night show before I did karaoke just so I could like run stage time and stuff.
Smart.
And she took one of those. Oh, when she had dropped the thing, she grabbed one of those slips, and I was like,
okay,
follow me on Twitter, bitch.
Yeah. At me, bitch.
Yeah. And she was scribbling something away at the table over there. And when our last friend finished singing, she had her bag on her arm, and they all came over and she was like, we're getting up to go. We're getting, like, clearly wanted to leave. And then she like walked past my stage and she crumpled this piece of paper and she threw this crumpled up piece of paper at me, and it hit me and it fell on the desk, and I picked it up and I opened it up, and it was my little Twitter slip that she had written me a note on the back of.
Who has this kind of time?
I used to have it laminated in my wallet. And that wallet got stolen, and it's actually the saddest thing in the world.
Oh, I would be the most sad about that more than the money.
I mean, honestly, I was like, it was this slip, and it said, you can't sing or KJ. KJ is karaoke jockey. You stink. And then there was a picture of like racist slanty eyes and teeth with stink lines above it. Neither one of us were Asian. I was like, why would you draw that on here? Why would you ever draw that? But why would you draw that on here? You can't sing or KJ. You stink. Racist face. My brother's a KJ, biatch. I was like, oh.
Please tell me she wrote BIOTCH.
She absolutely did.
Yes.
She absolutely did.
Yes.
And I had called the next person up on stage, and their song had just started. I said, no. And I paused it. I was like, excuse me, I just need to make an announcement real quick. I just took the microphone back, and I was like, I just want to read the note that was just thrown at me by the woman, and she hadn't closed her tab yet. She's a fucking idiot.
Oh my
she had not closed her tab yet, so she's like, she's at the bar, just like, oh fuck, and I have a microphone, and I was just like, and I read the note, and I was like, and there's a racist Asian face on here. What? lady. And she was this like 45-year-old lady in like a onesie with like big heels. And like,
So specific.
I was like, she was like, you're drunk, you dumb bitch. And I was just like, honey, I'm sober and I remember everything.
Also,
and
you
she, like,
wrote it down, dumb bitch. Like,
you did this. And then she was like she's like, where's the manager? Where's the manager? To the bartender. The bartender's like, I'm the manager. And I just go, how about you get your fucking shitty little onesie? What did somebody tell you like 20 years ago you had nice legs and you've been white knuckling that compliment as long as you fucking can? How about you get your shitty little ass out of this bar right now?
The bartender said that.
Oh, I said that.
Oh, you said that. Good for you.
I said that from the microphone because the bartenders like had my back. They're like, Brandie's the best. She's
That's
like,
amazing.
what are you talking about? And she was just like, fuck you. And I was just like, keep walking, you old hag. And I was just calling her old because she seemed like the kind of woman that would be
hate that. Murdered by that comment. Yeah.
She had that like alcohol red face.
Ooh, she was having a night.
Really, oh yeah.
Bless her.
And then afterwards, I just like literally then I get the microphone back to the other people. I was just laughing every time like somebody new would come in. I'd be like, let me tell you about what y'all missed earlier. This is why you get to the beginning of karaoke. And I kept reading the note and talking about it.
It's cathartic as fuck.
Oh yeah. But that's like the only time anyone's tried to call a manager on me. I was like, bitch, please.
Don't. They love me here. What was the last straw that got you out of any of these jobs where you were like, I will never do fill in the blank again? I mean, maybe the barbecue job, since you were you're not doing the restaurant thing ever again. Was there a last straw there?
Yeah. The restaurant gig was, so it was my senior year of high school and you had to like put in for your days off like ahead of time and then you might not get them. Yeah. But you got most of them. And one of the days I asked for off, I was in marching band in high school and it was the very last performance of our marching band. So me as a senior, last time I get to play like with my thing, I've been doing this for 4 years. I was band president. Like I was like,
it's a big deal.
In it. This is my best friends and they did not give me the night off. And when I got the schedule, I was like, hey, I'm going to this. So you need to find somebody else because this is important to me. And they were like, it's just school. And I was like, no, this is like actually my life. You guys are just my job. Like I don't. Yeah.
Also, I'm a teenager. Why would you rob me of that experience? You bitter pieces of shit.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like they were like, well, if we can't find somebody to cover it, then you have to be here. And I was like, well, I'm telling you, I won't be here. So they couldn't get somebody to cover it. And then they're like, okay. And I was like, well, I'm gonna call in sick because I'm gonna tell you that I'm not coming in. I kept being the whole week. I was like,
I told you a week ago.
Yeah, I was like, I will not be there.
Yeah, you're not going.
I'm not going. I'm going to go like the end of this thing that I've been doing for 4 years. It is the end. It is a celebration of 4 years that I put into it. I worked here for 4 months. Who gives a shit? So I called that morning to be like, hi, you guys don't have somebody to cover for me? And they're like, no. And I was like, well, I guess I'm sick.
That's totally valid.
Whatever you need to hear from me I'm not coming in. And they were like, well, if you're not here, then you're fired. And I was like, okay. If I don't come, then I think I quit.
Good for you.
But this is the crazy thing. They called, and I hadn't told this to my parents because I was just like dealing with it. And like, teenager in high school, I'm much closer with them now than I was at the time. So I was like just dealing with it in my own way. It's like, call my fucking house. And they're like, is Brandie really sick today?
Well, they snitched on you? Fuck you.
They snitched on me. And then I get a fucking call from my dad. It was like, are you sick? Why are you quitting your job? Why aren't you going to work? And I was like, because of this thing. So I had to tell him everything about it. And I was like, I'm for sure never going back there. Fuck these people.
Did your dad have your back?
He did not, because he was like, well, why are you lying about it? And I was like, I didn't lie to you. I just didn't think, I thought I was handling it. And I didn't, thought he was teaching me a lesson, but I was like, no, I'm actually much better than that, but that's okay.
Amazing.
My grandmother had my back. She lived with us at the time and she was like, fuck those people.
Good for your grandma. Good. Okay. How many bodily fluids have been on your person whilst you were on the clock? I mean, it sounds like you almost got puked on, but didn't,
almost got puked on. Never been spit on. Never just talking spit. I've never been spit on.
Okay.
I am very lucky.
Yeah, you are.
I think that's about it. Yeah. I've never been pooped on. I've never been pissed on.
Which is shocking for the hosting of either open mics because some comics are away or the karaoke thing. I mean, because people get sloppy with karaoke. Yes,
they do.
So
they absolutely do.
Yeah, I'm really surprised.
I got somebody's looking out for me in that department.
Facts.
I think Gigi Allen's got my back, and he's like, you know what? I did it wrong. I shouldn't have.
Okay. Do you tip?
Yes.
How much?
Yeah, 20% a bit minimum.
Okay.
Yeah,
What
20%
gets
minimum.
you to go beyond 20?
If it's somebody that like, if it seems like they are like stressed, then I'll go up a little bit more. It kind of depends. It number one, it depends on like what my situation is at the moment, if I've got it, but 20% minimum always. If somebody seems stressed, if somebody seems that they fucking love doing this too, they'll get more. Yeah. If it's like a frazzled mom or whatever, it's like, yeah, of course.
Sure.
They give you more money. And if it's like, I mean, you get a cup of coffee, you tip $1. Like that's technically 20, that's technically way more.
Yeah. It's 50% in some cases, depending.
Yeah, exactly. So, like it kind of just depends, but like bare minimum 20. Like whenever you have a little touch screen, I just always go to whatever the last one is usually.
That's lovely.
Just to throw it on there. Yeah, because I think it's also just like paying it back. Like I'm a big believer in like that kind of karma shit comes back to you.
I'm with you on that. Do you ever not tip? I don't mean with like barista experiences. I just mean, was there ever a situation where you were like, and I'm not tipping this person?
I don't think so, because the times where I've had like a bad experience at a restaurant, it is not the waiter's fault. Like generally,
good for you for knowing that.
It's like, I'm like, no, you did your best. This is like somebody else's thing. My food, like the few times I've had to like talk to a manager, I'm always like, she's great or he's great. This is like a food problem or like a something else problem. But like, and I generally also tip them more because I had to like, interrupt their flow about whatever.
Sure.
But that doesn't happen very often.
That's good. Have you ever been stiffed when you worked at any of these positions? I mean, I guess at the karaoke thing, it happened all the time, I would imagine. Because I consider that stiffing. If you're getting up and singing and not tipping, I consider that being stiffed. So you were.
Most people would stiff at karaoke.
Really?
Which was frustrating. Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy the number of people that like wouldn't tip, or they tip $1 for like 5 songs or something that night.
Being like, this is me paying for every song. It's like, no, it's not.
That's not how that works. Also, driving for Lyft, most people do not tip rideshare.
Really?
And you absolutely should, but most people do. I'd say 80 to 85% of people do not tip rideshare.
It could be. I think there's a misconception that it seems as if in some people's heads, they assume the driver's seeing all of the money that they just paid. And the driver's seeing, I think, like an eighth of it or something. Somebody did the math once, and it's insane how little they actually see, especially on shared rides and things like that. So interesting. Okay.
Yeah, you don't make a ton of money. You don't. And there's also there's also no way from the way that the app has gone now to know if you are even getting all your tips or not. Like there's zero transparency. Like those companies need to, like, deep regulation needs to happen.
Yeah, that's
I've been
shitty.
a part of so many class action lawsuits against Lyft and Uber.
Really?
I'll just get random checks for like $100 here and there just from like something else that got filed against them. And it's like, yeah, well,
they should have been clean. They did not break cleanly.
Uber used to have a thing where it said that tips were built in too. Like at the very beginning, it was like tips are included in the fare, like which was never true.
Not true. Yeah.
Uber's a deeply shady company. At least Lyft has always had the tip button as an option.
Yeah, since Uber. Jump Street, they've had it. They've had it in the beginning. Uber never. Exactly. Yeah, they didn't in the beginning. There was. I've ridden with some people that keep like a little cup on the what do you call it? The armrest in the middle.
Yeah.
And for a while I was like, that's so tacky. And then I was like, oh, this is because they actually work for shady companies. That sucks. And then I would put it in if I saw it. Okay. Well, I think you kind of sort of answered this because it was like a fired quit situation, but were you ever fired from a customer service job?
The
barbecue place?
The barbecue place.
Okay. Yeah, and who's the worst customer you've ever interacted with that you can think of offhand?
God, that karaoke lady was definitely up there.
That counts. If throwing something at you, I would have lost my actual mind. Like you would have caught these hands. That
was probably the most egregious thing anybody has ever done to me, because I was just like, you're in my house. Like, you're in my house right now. I have a microphone.
Shout out to Erin Lampard for saying a bartender once taught her. She was a guest on this podcast earlier. She's also a comic. A bartender said to her that if you're ever catch an attitude from the people that come in, they are in your house and you get to act accordingly. And that was so helpful. I had never thought about that. And it's such a nice reminder, I think, to say that, no, they are a guest, even though it's a financial exchange. I think there's this misconception that because I am paying for you, I can treat you as if you are human garbage. And it's like, no. You're in a private building right now, or car, or whatever. Okay, now we're getting on to the good stuff. We hope you all saved room for dessert. Okay, here we go. So what was the nicest thing a customer has done for you whilst you were working that you can think of?
Aw. You know what? One of my early PA gigs was on a show called Thank God You're Here. It was like a sketch comedy improv show on NBC, and I was talent PA on it.
Okay.
And one of the days I got Jerry Springer. He was going to do improv on the show. And one of the truly nicest human beings I've ever met. And I was his PA for the day, and I was supposed to just sit outside of his door, and then if he needed something, he would come and let me know. And he was like, "You're just gonna sit out here in this hallway? No, you come and hang out with me." So he like brought me in his room, and he was like, "What do you want for lunch?" Because I get to order whatever I want. So we had lunch together, and then at the end of he shot his thing, and at the end of the day, I walked him out to his car to take him back to the hotel, and he just went, "You know what? I want you to know, I shot that, and it was very fun. You were the highlight of my day."
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, Jerry Springer, I love you so much.
He was mayor of Cincinnati for a minute, and
yes,
I am from a town right outside of Cincinnati where I currently am now. And he also he's donated he's put a ton of money still back into towns outside of Cincinnati. And I have heard, even though his show was a clusterfuck nightmare of insanity. And scripted and hired actors, by the way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All of that aside, much the opposite of Ellen, I have heard only wonderful things about him. So it's lovely that you brought him up. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, genuinely one of the highlight moment in my life, was just like, Jerry Springer loves me.
And I'm amazing. I love that he had lunch with you. Like, that's just every part of that is lovely.
It was so sweet. And it was also just like, no matter what level, who you are, wherever you get, there is no reason to not treat people below you as if you are an equal. Whatever, you're a different person. That doesn't matter. Like, always treat the people below you nicely.
Yeah, because even if you were to have been a career PA, which some people choose to do, God love them, that is a hard fucking job.
Yes, it
but
is.
You never know. I mean, and obviously the reason to be kind to people is not because of where you think they will end up. It's because they are human in front of you and you just should be. But look at where you are now, still lauding him as a positive, amazing experience. And it's like, yeah, he's sort of retired. I don't know if his show's still on, but he's still he's somewhat out of the entertainment world. But wouldn't you rather people speak on your name in that way as opposed to, the stories we've heard of so many others? I mean, it doesn't, I'm totally with you on that. Absolutely. It matters.
Absolutely. And also it's like, if I was ever in this situation where I could help him out, I would. Because of that moment of kindness. I'd be like, no, you paid it forward. I got your back. And I've worked with some headliners in comedy, same thing, where I'm like, the way the club system works, like the actual clubs do not pay you very much as a feature. So there are some headliners that will like give you more money just because they're like, dude, I know it's not 1980. I'm going to take money out of my pocket to give to you because this is what you actually deserve this weekend.
Wow.
And like the people that have done that, if I'm ever in a position where I'm headlining and they need it, they're taken care of. Like they're on my good book forever. You don't want to be in the other one.
This is good. This is like celebrity gossip bullshit. But is Maria Bamford the loveliest human? Are you able to speak on that? I figured she comes across that way. Like I just so delight in how vulnerable she is. Anyway, that's not what this is about. Yeah. Okay, great. She's a dream. What is the best lesson that you have personally learned just from customer service? Not from comedy or whatever, but like a lesson that working directly with customers has informed you to believe now or like taught you now?
If somebody is shitty and they come at you, if you hold your worth, they will fall. They will crumble. They absolutely will.
Come on with that. Hold your worth. Yeah,
because those people, if you're doing that shitty thing, you already feel like a small person.
Oh, come on.
If they feel that like, oh baby, not me.
I'm not the one. I'm not the one.
They will shrink. And they will shrink. And like they might be mad, they might rant about it later. Who gives a shit? But like, do not make yourself small for a small person.
And so many sound bites. That's amazing. Okay, that's great. What is the best tip that you have ever gotten? I mean, it's sort of a weird, because you said how very little you've been tipped throughout your customer service history, but is there one that stands out where you were like, somebody just threw down a 50 or 100 or 1,000 or whatever? And
I'm trying to think, because most of the, you know what? I had a ride one time with a Lyft couple that I drove them, picked them up from the Forum. So it's a concert. I just remember where it was from. I forget who they were seeing, but it was like an older kind of boomery couple. I picked them up from the Forum and I drove them up to Ventura and they were delightful. They were just like one of those old couples that's like still in love and cool. Aww. And you're just like, oh, you guys are great. And we had just a delightful time. And then at the end, the guy gave me $100.
Hell
So
yeah.
Yeah. He was just like, this has been a perfect end to a perfect night. Thank you so
that makes me
much.
want to cry. I love that.
Yeah. It was so nice. It was that, like those rides would keep me in the game too.
Yes.
You'd get a good one and you'd be like, this was like, I just hung out with some great people.
Yeah.
I got paid to do it.
There was one time at the comedy club where I work where I was just getting shit on repeatedly, every table, fighting about the 2 drinks, just shitting on us. And this guy was trying to court the business of the place where I work. And he saw that I was getting shit on. He worked in like graphic design or logos or something and wanted to start doing the merch for the place. And I was desperate to get him in because he was hot and nice and also was just being lovely. And I wasn't at all thinking, oh, this dude's about to hook it up. It was just, he was just being nice in a sea of shit. And so I just, anytime it looked like he was looking for a drink, we normally can't do that because it's too high volume. But anytime I saw his head go up, I was like, nope, I got him. Fuck all these tables. I don't care. And then he gave me $200. And I was like, this is the biggest tip I've ever gotten. And he was just like, you know, and he wrote a note like, I saw you working so hard. Now, granted, it was a business move because he knew that I could put him in touch with the right people, which I immediately did. But it was also just such a lovely, because when you're getting shit on repeatedly, like if you had 17 bad rides up before then, and then you get slipped, even if they only gave you an extra 20, just the language of this is a perfect end to a perfect night is so lovely. Okay.
Exactly. It was just like, thank you for acknowledging my humanity.
Oh,
that's all you're ever asking for. It's just like,
that's
hey,
it. That is
I'm a person that's on the clock. This is you having fun. I'm working.
I'm a person on the clock and you're having fun. Don't shit on me. I'm into it. Okay. What is one piece of advice that you would give to customers who are going to interact with customer service workers besides tip your karaoke people, which is insane to me that people don't do? But do you have...
I mean, that's definitely a big one. I mean, I think just remembering that they're human beings and you don't know what's going on with them. And it doesn't cost anything to give someone a moment of empathy. To be like, it just doesn't. It just doesn't. If you don't know what's going on in somebody's life, and also if you have a bad restaurant experience, you can just come back another time.
Turns out you sure can.
Yeah, you're not going to eat at a restaurant once in your entire life. I'm sorry if it wasn't fucking perfect. I'm sorry if, whatever the thing. If you need one night to be so good, otherwise your life is ruined, then what is your life? Like, it's fine.
Ooh.
Like, learn to roll with the punches, baby, because if you can't do it when you're out having fun, you're going to be really bad at it when you're up against the wall yourself.
It's the best way to end, because that was my last question. So how can people get in touch with you, Brandie? Like, are you giving out your socials? Is that something you're comfortable doing? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Brandazzle, Brandazzle. And then my website is brandieposey.com, where you can find more about me. If I ever have tour dates again, they'll be listed there. But I'm also on the app Bands in Town. If you use that for following music, you can follow me on there as well for whenever I come to your town. And then my album is called Opinion Cave, and that is available wherever you listen to albums. If you look my name up. And then my podcast is called Lady to Lady. It happens every Wednesday. And then we have bonus content available on our Patreon, where you can find Lady to Lady. You can find all that information. But the free show is very, very fun. And then I have a monthly Zoom show that happens now.
Oh, you do?
It used to be a live show in Los Angeles at the Virgil, but now it's online because I'm trying to not kill people.
Fair.
In these times. And it's called Picture This, and it's comedians paired up with animators, and they draw your jokes behind you during your set.
That is so awesome.
It's a total blast. And the animators we get people like Pendleton Ward, the guy that created Adventure Time and Midnight Gospel on Netflix. And,
Midnight Gospel is such the best insanity. It's the best show.
Yeah. We get people from like BoJack Horseman and Big Mouth,
amazing.
and like big name animators. We had Craig Bartlett, the guy the creator of Hey Arnold. He does the show all the time.
Amazing.
And it's so fun because it's like you seeing your jokes turned into cartoons in front of you, so then you get to like mess with them and like laugh at them and stuff. But if you follow me online, you'll see all that information. And I'm just out in these streets wearing a mask.
And hello. And Lady to Lady is LADYT T-O, not the number 2, T-O-L-A-D-Y. And then it's Brandie, I-E, Posey, S-E-Y, just because there's some spelling potential there. And well, folks, we are going to drop your checks now. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to help us out here at Service from Hell, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and tell your friends to listen. It will help us reach more people that need to be schooled in the art of being kind and will be catharsis for those of us still working in the industry. If you want to get in touch with us here at Service from Hell, send us an email or all of your receipts at servicefromhellpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, if you can't afford to tip, you can't afford to go out. So don't be garbage and be good to people. It's easier that way. Thank you for being on, Brandie. We very much appreciate you. This was lovely. You gave so many gems. I don't even know how I'm going to suss them all out. This was amazing. Well, folks, that's going to be it. Thanks for being on. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.